So, yeah, so my name is Ellen Phelps, and I am a member of the Frances Irwin Handweavers Guild. And we are a guild, a weaving guild of about 40 members. And we meet once a month, although now we have been meeting by Zoom. And we meet in northwestern Sussex County, New Jersey. So we are really in the northwest corner of New Jersey. So our guild members come from New York and Pennsylvania because that whole tri-state area is within our catch basin. So yeah, so we have a great group of people, and I remember at one meeting in 2019, one of our members said, well, MAFA is looking for grant applications, and does anybody want to do a grant? And I thought for a minute and nobody said anything. And then all of a sudden I heard myself saying, sure, I'll write a grant. And just let's throw out some ideas. So somebody said, gee, we really don't know a lot about linen, and that would be great. And so I thought, well, yeah, we could do that. And, you know, my thing is go big or go home. So it was like, well, let's plant it and go right through the whole process and weave it. And so we understand everything. So that's exactly how this came about. And one of my goals was not only to learn about the linen itself, but I thought that having something for the whole guild to work on would make the group more cohesive. And it would also show different skills that people had that we didn't even know about. Maybe some people were really good managers. Maybe some people were really good at getting instructors. And maybe some people were really great weavers. Some were spinners. And so we would bring that all together. And I thought that it would bring out the best in our guild and make us more cohesive as a group. So with that, I will start our journey. This is a beautiful picture of flax in bloom, and there's nothing prettier than a blue flax flower. So yeah, so we called it a journey because it's not something that happened in a day. It's something that takes a while, because when you plant something, you're at the whim of Mother Nature, and you have to be patient because things have to grow. And when after they grow, it has to go through certain processes before you can spin it and weave it. So yeah, so it was indeed a journey. And our journey took 2 years. We were supposed to only do it for a year, but just after we received the grant, COVID came along and everything was in turmoil. We didn't meet in person. Instructors weren't coming to do workshops. So it was extended over 2 years while we could figure out how to do workshops on Zoom, and instructors could get their act together of how to do Zoom workshops. And it all came together, and it was great. So yeah, so we planned, and then because of COVID, we revised. We really learned how to be flexible, and we accomplished and we learned despite of what was going around us in the world. And to tell you the truth, it was really great that we had this project to work on, because since we weren't meeting in person, we met in various ways to discuss this project. So we really kept together as a group. And it really gave us a real positive thing to look at in the midst of a world that was looking pretty miserable. So just a few things about the history of flax, which to me was the first thing we delved into. And it just blew me away when I found out that linen cloth is more ancient than the written word. It is so old. They have found in caves in Georgia in the Upper Paleolithic era, there was wild flax that had been woven and spun and used as cloth. And this goes back thousands of years. To me, that's amazing. And it gives such a depth to linen that it has such a rich history. And that really made me even more excited about taking this journey, because I realized that we weren't starting from where we were now, but we're really starting from thousands and thousands of years ago. So that was it. If anybody is interested in history at all, just to go into the history of flax, I mean, you could speak hours just on that topic. But just one more thing I'll mention about in history is that the ancient Egyptians were the people who really were the experts in linen. They were able to take the wild flax and they were able to grow it into the long, thin fiber, more like what we have today. And their spinning and weaving skills were just remarkable. They were able to make warps that were 500 threads to an inch, which is like a spider web. And they could do this. They used linen, very light linen clothing, because it's so hot in Egypt, and linen will absorb a lot of perspiration. It can absorb a lot of liquid without feeling wet. So it was a perfect cloth for the Egyptians, and they used it for everything. And so they were the masters. But we started our project not only in learning about it, but in actual growing. And our growing started on April 11th. And what we did was we had a wonderful source at Quiet Valley Living Historical Farm in Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. It's a working farm, and it's an educational center. They do things there like it's a replica, or not even a replica. It's really a working German farm that would be found in that area of Pennsylvania from the late 1700s to the early 1900s. And it's a great place, and they allowed us to plant our crop there because it really was mutually beneficial, because they have educational groups coming through there and people wanting to learn about this. They have special events that take place there that a lot of people come to learn. So we were able to provide something that was a learning experience that people could see at different stages. And it helped, of course, it helped us because we had a place to do it. And not only that, they had the tools that we needed to do it with, which was such a blessing. So the seed we got at Landis Valley Museum in Pennsylvania, the seed came from Holland, and it was a long line flax seed. We purchased that, and these are some pictures of our members, and they are, rototilling, raking, and sowing the seed. The last picture on the bottom on the right is, it shows how we tamped down the seed after it was planted. They took pieces of wood or cardboard and stepped on them, and it kind of tamped down the soil. So that was April 11th. And here is one of our guild members, and the way we planted the seed was by broadcasting. He has a pan full of seed, and he would just scatter it. So, okay, so I said that this was how we planted the seed. We broadcasted it. Okay, so it was really nice that we, wait a minute, let me go back. Okay, so what the area that we planted, it was 10 feet by 30 feet, and our first sprouts appeared on the 21st of April. So the farmer's rule of thumb was to plant 1/4 of an acre of flax per person in the family, and that would serve the needs of the family for a year. And you didn't get a lot out of that. You might get a new shirt or a new pillowcase or something, but that was their rule of thumb for how much flax they planted. So the flax grew. It started growing. Yay! We were happy when we saw some green. So by May 11th, this is what it looked like. And it was growing and growing, and yeah, it looked great. We were very happy, and we did have to weed it. It's important to weed it in its early stages so that the flax doesn't get overgrown with weeds, and we did that. Well, the way we did things, because it was in pandemic times, was we couldn't all come to do things at the same time. So we would have a couple people come when it came to weeding, or we spaced things out over a couple days so that people could participate, but not be crowded together, even though it was outside and we wore masks. So one of our members said, I really enjoyed the entire process from sowing seeds to the weaving of the linen. She's an avid gardener, so growing a plant that in its early stages gives no sign whatsoever of the wonderful fabric it can become is beyond exciting for me. And it's true, is that, you know, you're looking at this plant growing and wondering, how is it ever going to wind up on a loom? You know, is it going to wind up on a loom, please? And yeah, it's quite amazing. So at last, it was ready to harvest. So the farmer's folklore says it takes about 100 days for the flax to grow before you should harvest it. And ours actually took 90 days because we had a very wet, humid summer, and it grew and it came to its ripe stage very fast. So this is where it really helped to have someone, one of our members who lives at the farm, and she could check it all the time, and she knew when it was ready to be harvested. So she would put the word out and say, you know, we're harvesting tomorrow, and we showed up. And the way we harvest it is not by cutting it as you would other grasses like hay. You harvest it by pulling it up by the root, because you want to get the longest amount of fiber that's inside of that plant. And the fibers do extend right down to the root. So here we are harvesting. You'll see that people are in 18th century garb, because since we were at the farm, and since people do come to the farm to learn about what takes place in that time period, we had to be dressed appropriately. So here we were pulling up the flax. As you will see in the first picture on the top on the left, some of the flax is lying down a little bit. The night before we had a rainstorm, and it did knock down a little bit of the flax, but we were able to save it. We tied up the flax in bundles, and then those bundles were put on the fence of the garden to dry. On the picture on the right, you'll see some of the flax up close. It's tied with twine, and the twine was made from flax, from tow flax that had been grown there on a previous year and had been made into twine. So we actually used flax to tie up the flax. Here's another picture. I just like this picture because it looks like it could have been taken 100 years ago. I just love this picture of, pulling up the flax and then getting it ready to be dried. It was really a great day. And again, here's a close-up of the picture of the twine, the flax twine that was made and previously, and that we used to tie up our flax with. So the bundles were dried for a while until they were pretty dry. And what happened was timing was on our side. The very day after we harvested, the pigs got loose in the garden and trampled down the whole garden. So those little pig hoof prints you see, luckily did not get our flax. It was too close a call, but that's what happens on a farm. Anything can happen, but we were lucky. So the next step is called retting. And retting is a process by which the inner flax fibers are separated from the outer woody stem. And it's a process that involves microorganisms to break down the pectins that hold everything together on the flax stalk. And there are two ways to do it, and we actually did both ways. There's dew retting, and dew retting is where you spread out the flax on the lawn, and actually the dew provides the water that's needed to break down these portions of the stalk. Or there's water retting in a trough, which you submerge the flax into a trough of water. And so those both ways are ways of doing it. Dew retting does not take as long, or dew retting takes longer, than water retting. And the two processes give very different colors. The grayish color on the right, on the picture on the right, was from dew retting, and the more flaxen yellow color on the right of the picture is from the water retting. So and you can get, depending on environmental conditions and length of time you have something retting, you can get a range of colors. Here again is the picture. It's a close-up of the trough retting. We had a trough that was filled with water, and you can see the flax stalks. They're bound up and they're just submerged in that water. And here is a picture of the dew retting. So the dew retting, again, we spread it out on the ground, and the sun and the heat and the dew made that process occur. So, dew retting is supposed to take about 3 to 5 weeks. But since we experienced a very wet and hot July, it was really completed after 10 days. That was really fast. And so our member, Sue Euler, who lives at the farm, was able to see that this process was happening really quickly. So, so she, let us know that, hey, it's ready. We've got to pick this stuff up now and get it off the ground, which we did. And to even dry it some more, what we did we placed it in the outdoor bake oven at the farm, and that dried it out completely so that we could stop that retting process. So here's the two little farmers here. These are members of our guild, and they're carrying that flax into the barn, and yeah, with their masks on. So the next thing that happens in processing is called rippling. So now our flax has been retted and it's dried again, but now you have to remove the seed pods. Okay, the seed pods grow at the top of the stalk. So this device is called, like I said, it's called rippling, and there's very long teeth, iron teeth. You pull the stalks of flax through the teeth, and the seeds get caught and they fall off in the front of the rippling machine. After you've removed the seeds, which if you want, you can save those seeds to replant. You really don't want to wait until the seeds are totally mature to harvest your flax, because then your flax quality isn't as good. So it's best to remove those seeds and before those seed heads are totally mature. So the next step is called breaking, and that's exactly what you do. You're going to break that woody stalk on the flax because your fibers are inside of the woody stalks. So you have a flax break, which is the utensil, the tool that's shown here. And Doug is showing how to use that. You lift up that heavy bar. You lift it up, you put your flax inside, and then you let that bar come down and it crushes the flax. So that starts the process of breaking up the woody parts of the plant that are on your flax, your dried flax, and keeping those nice silky fibers inside. So this again shows breaking of the flax. You can see how the inside of the flax break, there are wooden pieces that stand up, and that corresponds to wooden pieces on the handle that they fit together, and that way the flax itself will actually break. The pieces, if you can see on the wooden platform, there are little pieces of flax stalk. That is called the shives or the boon. That's what's coming off when you're breaking. And those little pieces were collected because nothing goes to waste with flax. You can use everything. Those little pieces were collected and used either for bedding for animals, or they were used as tinder to start fires, like in the outdoor oven. Here's a close-up that you can see a little better. Can you see how that flax inside is like accordioned, because the handle of the flax break has come down and really squished it, and it's breaking those woody stalks off. And what you're beginning to get now is you're beginning to see what is flying out the back here in the wind. You're beginning to see some more subtle fibers that are what your aim is to get your flax fiber. So now you've done the rough breaking part, and the next part to the next stage in removing that woody plant material is called scooching. And scooching is really a way of scraping the broken pieces of hard plant material that is adhered to the soft fibers off of those fibers. It can be done in two ways. We did it in two ways. One was with a scooching board. On the left, you see Doug is holding the flax in one hand, and he'll place that against the tower of wood that you see, and he will then scrape with what's called a scooching knife. It's a wooden knife, and a lot more of that woody fiber will come off. And again, you'll see he has a tarp underneath, and it's because we saved that because it's very useful. And certainly in days gone by, farmers couldn't go to their local farm supply and buy straw for their animals' bedding. This is what they used. They collected it and they used everything. And the other two pictures are a really interesting machine that was used for scooching. You can see Doug has the flax lying against a board, and then the wheel has multiple scooching knives on it. So by turning the wheel, the knives continuously are working to scrape that fiber. Finally, so now we've broken and we've scooched, and now we're heckling. And heckling is the final step in getting that fiber just gorgeous. And in heckling, what you want to do is you really want to, you're using these iron nails to split and straighten the flax fibers. And what you're going to do is you start with a very open set of these nails, and you work down to a very dense set of nails. So you really fine tune your flax. So what this man is doing here, he's using a very a set of nails that are far apart. So this would be the beginning of the heckling process. And you can see that the flax that he's holding is quite stiff, okay? And you'll see on the next pictures how in moving down through more fine-tooth combs, the flax becomes very limp and beautiful. And I will say, note to self, those heckles are very sharp. I scratched my hand on it, and it's a good thing I carried Band-Aids. So here people are heckling again. You can see that they're very busy at work. It takes a little tugging. It's not a simple thing of combing as if you're combing through your hair. So this one of our guild members has her foot on the bench to steady it, while another one is pulling that flax through the heckles. So you do use several types of heckles. We had I think 3 or 4 different densities, and it says here that the common way to do it was to start with about 4 nails per inch, and then you work down to 48 and 80 nails per inch. So you really got to get beautiful fibers out of that. And this is what you get. I mean, what a difference from the stalky fibers that we saw in the beginning. Excuse me. So yeah, this guild member is working right now on a very fine-toothed comb, and she's already combed the fiber that is sticking in the comb to the left that's being held there. But now it's really beginning to look like fiber, like flax fiber that has a chance to become something beautiful and woven. here's just a picture of, of the three processes. On the right, she's breaking. In the middle is scooching. And on the left is heckling. So all these things were going on at once. We were very busy. And like I said, we, you know, because we couldn't all come together on the same day, we'd come on different days or stagger our times. So not everybody was together. And this is the Flax. This is the moment in our journey where it was my aha moment. When I put my hands on that silken flax, it was like a miracle. It was like, wow, it was my wow moment. To think that that was hiding inside of those stalky plants, and that it was one of those unspeakable moments. But this is how we get the term flaxen hair. You know, a lot of our terms come from weaving and spinning, and this is how that term comes about, because that's what it looks like. Again, here's another picture of it. It's just, I couldn't get enough of this. And if you notice, these heckles they're very old. They're made, and they're hand forged heckles. They're not out of a machine. So now you have this fiber and you want to get it ready to spin with. And because it's still flax, it's not linen yet. So what you do, because we don't want it to, that nice flax that we've combed out, we don't want it to become a jumbled mess and stick it in a pile. We make what's called a strict. And a strict is like a skein if you're working with yarn. It's a way to store your flax until you're ready to spin it, so it doesn't get all tangled up. And it's a method of twisting, and that's what this person is doing on the left. And on the right, when you're getting ready to spin it, this guild member is preparing it to put it on a distaff. And she's spreading out the flax. She's opened up the strict, spread out the flax, and she's going to wrap it around a distaff. A distaff is a tool that is used to hold your flax next to you while you're spinning it. And the distaff can be seen on the table. So here we are. Those were our stricts of flax. We had a range of color because the dew-retted flax was darker. The wet trough retted flax was lighter. We wound up with 33 stricts with a total of 29.9 ounces. After spinning it, we wound up with 2,835 yards, and the average was about 129 yards per ounce. So here we are spinning, and some of our members had already spun. Some of us hadn't. Some of us had just spun wool. And spinning flax is very different from spinning wool, as I found out. I was used to spinning wool, and your hand movements are not the same. Wool has a lot of give to it. Flax does not. It was a whole different way of spinning. And we had 2 Zoom workshops, one presented by Patsy Z, and she taught us on the workshop how to prepare a distaff and how to spin on a wheel. And Crystal White Edwards showed us another way of preparing a distaff and how to spin our flax on a drop spindle. So we had also invited some neighboring guilds, the neighboring spinning guild and weaving guild, to participate with us in our workshops. We thought it would benefit everybody, and we were happy to have them. Again, spinning we did in small groups outside at Quiet Valley, or some spinners took flax home and spun it at home. This is a picture, it's a screenshot of Patsy Z during the spinning workshop, and she was showing us how to spin on a wheel. And you'll notice there's a little cup on the spinning wheel, and that's filled with water. And every so often, you need to dip your hands in the water so that you're spinning your flax a little wet. What this does, it helps the flax to stick together. I think the pectins that are still in the flax tend to, they're wet and a little gummy, and that helps with your spinning the flax. So after we spun, we had to scour it and we had to size it. Scouring it is a way of cleaning it. Cleaning it was done with Orvis paste, which is an animal's fiber cleanser, a little washing soda and water. We heated that up, and we put our spun skeins in that hot water and simmered it. And you can see on the top picture how dirty that water is. That is still stuff coming out of those skeins, stuff that we don't want, whether it's the pectins or other plant material stuff, byproducts that you don't need. And so this was a way of cleaning your skeins. And after they were cleaned, we wanted to size them, and the sizing was made out of flaxseed, which we simmered in water, and it was a little slimy. But the scouring, after the scouring, you have a lot of hairiness to the fibers, and you want to tame them down a little bit with the sizing. That makes for easier weaving. Here's a couple pictures. This is scouring the flax, and you can see how dirty the water is. And you'll see the little tags. Each skein had a tag on it with how many yards were in each skein. Another picture, this was when we were removing from the scouring pot with tongs, removing the cleaned skeins. So the bowl on the left is cleaned, washed skeins of fiber. Then here, this is a picture of Marianne, and she made the sizing, and she's sizing the skeins by dipping them into the goop that is made from the seeds. The seeds that we used, by the way, were not special seeds. They were just flax seeds bought from a grocery store, but they worked. And then all those size skeins were put on a drying rack, and there they are. It's messy. So here we are. We spun, scoured, sized, measured, weighed, tagged, and we finally wound them onto our spools here. There we are again. Lots of bobbins of flax, and you can see there's a variant of color, but we use that to our advantage when we planned our project. This is just a summary page for us, what we had done, and we used this to decide how our weaving project was going to be planned. We figured that at a set of 30 EPI, we could weave a piece of cloth about 18 inches wide. So we would have 540 warp threads. We could weave a piece about 2 yards long with about 1 yard of loom waste. So we figured a 3-yard warp. One of our members, Sally, who's very good at this, figured this all out for us, and she did a little test run, and it worked very well. So that's what we went with. And what we, just to back up a minute, when we were spinning, we wanted everybody to spin about the same grist or diameter of thread. So we had prepared a little diagram that people could take home with them and refer to for the thickness that they would aim at. So we were really pleased that almost all of the spun thread we got back from everyone was really quite the same. It was really great to see that people could be uniform in what they were spinning, so that our weaving would become more uniform. So just before we had our weaving project, before we started it, we had a workshop, a 3-day workshop with Melissa Dunning-Weaver, which was absolutely fantastic. I mean, she took us back to the 1800s and taught us some history and how people used the linens in their home. And that's what we were aiming to replicate in our project. We were kind of wondering how could you do a weaving workshop over Zoom, because we were used to doing workshops in person. And but you know, it worked, and you know, it worked. It was really amazing to me how it did work. It was she was able to troubleshoot things with us. If we showed her a close-up of our work, she could critique it and help us. So hey, Zoom works, folks, and it was really a godsend during this pandemic time, because nobody could travel and be together. We also had a lecture by Susie Ballinger titled "The Stories a Bedsheet Can Tell." And again, that was an historical account of how bed linens were made. And again, that fit right in with our theme, and it was very interesting. So this was one from our workshop. This was one of our members' projects as she was working on it. Like I said, Melissa had given us each drafts, 18th century or 19th century drafts to use, and everybody had a different draft. We purchased our own linen for the workshop, and so we got, you know, a variety of pieces. And from those pieces, we collected samples. So everybody who participated in the workshop got a sample attached to the original draft. So everybody wound up with a real nice collection of old drafts for household that were used for household articles like tablecloths, curtains, or towels. So here's our warp. We're finally starting, and there's the warping board. Yay, we're starting to look like weavers now. And our warping board is 540 ends on a 3-yard warp. And as you can see, we use the fact that some fibers were darker than others, and we use that as a design feature. Another thing that weavers are great at doing, it's called the design feature. And so what we didn't plan on was different color fibers, but hey, we got different color fibers and we made it work. This is a picture of the draft that we used. We decided to make some towels. And so we're now threading the warp, and followed by this draft. You can see it's a pretty easy threading pattern. And we decided to use a twill pattern because that was very commonly used, and we hoped it would show off nicely with our linen. So here we are, we're getting our warp on, getting it all set. And you can see on the pictures how the outside warps are darker and the insides are lighter. It wasn't too hard to warp it. The fibers were a little hairy in some places, but what we did was we painted the warp from the heddles onto the back beam. We painted the warp with some more sizing, and as we advanced the warp, we painted the new warp with more sizing. So that kind of held it together for us, because our yarns were pretty hairy. Now, it could have been because we're not all expert spinners, and I think that some of our problems came because we're not expert spinners, and maybe that made our yarns a little more unruly, but it worked. So finally, yay, we're beginning to weave. And you can see we already had a broken warp. That was one of the problems we wind up with, were broken warps. Again, I think it happened because we weren't really experienced spinners. And so maybe our spinning was not as uniform. Maybe there were some weak points in our threads. But no problem, we know how to fix broken warps, and there it goes. You can see some of the patterning in there. So yeah, we did have some problems. What's a weaving project without a problem? So we did have some hairy warps, some hairy threads that curled around. Again, that was from our maybe inexperienced spinning, and I'll admit to that. But we very carefully, with a very fine pair of scissors, snip them off without snipping the warp. And we also had, because of the hairiness on the threads, we had some sticking warp threads. So we actually lifted the shafts one at a time. Like if you were lifting 2 and 4, we didn't push down on them together. We lifted 2 first, and when that was nice and up and everything was clear, we lifted 4, and we found that that helped alleviate the sticky warp thread problem. And there's one of our little culprits, one of our little squiggly warp threads. But here we are, folks. I mean, we did it. This is a woven piece. This is a woven towel. This was before finishing. It was just taken off the loom. And I think our darker flax turned out beautiful on the sides. And the finished towel held up to the light. You can see that there's some uneven spinning in the thicker and thinner threads, but that's handmade, and that's what makes it so charming. So when we finished the towel, we took measurements, and after we finished weaving the towel, we wet finished it in a washing machine. We mangled it, which I'll explain on the next slide. And we really didn't have a lot of length and width loss. It was minimal compared to other things you might weave with. The total width loss on the bottom was only 2.7%, and length a little bit more. But because it's not a very elastic, flax isn't very elastic, so it doesn't stretch a lot on the loom, and it also doesn't shrink a lot like cotton might shrink. It doesn't shrink as much. So this is mangling, and that was another new word in our vocabulary. We did learn a lot of new words, believe me. And mangling is a way of ironing out the linen. You really don't iron linen to get it beautiful with a hot iron. You need pressure and something very heavy. So here we used a marble rolling pin, and the marble rolling pin with little spritzes of water, and then just rolling and rolling hard over the linen. It flattens the linen fibers, and what it does is creates that beautiful sheen that you see on old linens. You cannot get that sheen with an iron. You only really get that sheen with mangling. And not only does it bring out the sheen, but it really brings out the pattern in your cloth. And I mean, here you can see the pattern. It just jumped out at you after the mangling process. I mean, it was gorgeous. And this, folks, was what we planted in the ground. It was just amazing to us. Another close-up of the pattern, you can see where the mangling flattens out some of those fibers, and you get the shine. An interesting thing that happened was we compared ours, which is the darker piece, with a piece from 1830. Now, the piece from 1830 is the white piece, and that person had a finer thread. But you know what was really funny was that you can see on the just below our piece, she had a very thick piece of thread go through there. And there's also a threading mistake in this piece. So, you know, it happens to the best of us, and it's okay because it's handmade. So that was our journey. What we're going to do with the first towel that's off the loom, is we're going to show it to everybody in our guild when we can meet again. And then we're going to present it to Quiet Valley, to the farm, so that they can have it in one of the restored houses. And when people are taking tours, they can discuss this and say that the linen in this towel was actually produced on this farm. So we've done other events. It was a little difficult during COVID to do a lot of education that we would like, but other things turned up that we didn't even think of. At Quiet Valley, they did have some events, and we were there spinning and weaving and showing people our product. We did videos for a historic Millbrook Village in the National Park here in New Jersey. We did videos on preparing flax and on the flax plant itself. We had a Ravelry page that Sally had posted on. We discussed our project wherever we went, at Weaving History Conference and to other guilds. We're here presenting it to you tonight. And surprisingly, we have had several requests from other guilds already for this presentation. One is from a weaving guild, another is from a spinning guild, another is from an embroidery guild, and even a garden club is interested. So, you know, you never know where things are going to go. This is just a picture of Doug being filmed by the National Park Service for their promotional video. And, you know, here's just a funny little sidelight. Toe flax is the shorter fibers that are produced. When you're cleaning your flax and you get those nice long fibers, there's some shorter fibers, and they're not the creme de la creme. I mean, we we spun and wove with the cashmere of the fibers, but the shorter fibers are not, you know, you can spin with those, you can use those. Sometimes they make a rougher fabric, but you know, one of our guild members was at a fiber festival in Colorado and met this man who was a flintlock reenactor, and she told him about tow. He was saying, oh, we use tow. They use it to pack down their bullets, I guess. I don't know much about firearms, but and so we sent him a whole bag of tow, and he was thrilled. And this is what he packs it down into the gun. And so, hey, like I said, there are so many uses for this plant. Again, you could just do a whole webinar in the what you use flax for. So just to sum up here, what we learned how to grow flax. We learned that it's very time consuming, but that it's very amazing. We learned how to spin it and weave it. We learned about the history, and we will never look at linen the same again. We now see it with new eyes. We learned that it's great to share our knowledge. And we learned that in this crazy time we're living in, sometimes you have to fly by the seat of your pants and plan differently, which we did. We learned that you can do workshops on Zoom, and they're great. And you know, it actually was less expensive to do a workshop on Zoom than it was to bring someone to your site in person. So we were able to do a couple of additional workshops that we would have spent all the money on one for if we had it in person. So that's something good to think about when you're thinking about getting more bang for your buck. So we did learn that each person in our guild has unique areas of expertise, and I myself learned to appreciate everybody. It did make our guild more cohesive. It was so much fun. But I will say that it's also nice that we can purchase linen thread online if you're going to do a project. We don't have to go out there in the backyard and grow a whole field. I also know that if I had to rely on making my own clothing out of flax, I would not be wearing much at all. And the learning never ends, and we are so grateful to MAFA for allowing us to do this project. Again, thank you to MAFA for awarding us this guild, this grant. At first, we thought it was going to be a lot to tackle, but we broke it down into little pieces and we did it. Again, a thank you to Quiet Valley, because without their farm and their processing tools, it would have been almost impossible to do this. And I want to personally thank each member of our guild who's really very special to me. I just listed here some resources. This is the Landis Valley where we got our flax. There's some flax that you can purchase, or linen you can purchase, a couple sources there, and some of our instructor sources and our neighboring guild resources who we worked with on this project. So there we are, folks, and I leave you with this picture of us harvesting the flax. I like this picture. It is a favorite picture of Sue Euler, who she liked this picture, and she's the person who lives at Quiet Valley and had some expertise in growing flax and knew when we had to do certain procedures. So is it the end of the project? Or, you know, with people being interested in our project, maybe it's just the beginning. So I leave with that thought. I thank you for listening to my project and taking this journey with me. And we'll open for questions. And with that, I'm going to get out of this PowerPoint.
Ellen, thank you so much. That was
Yeah.
absolutely fascinating.
Oh, thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
really excellent.
Thank you.
We're going to take questions, but also, Patty, do you want to start with the chat? You're muted.
There we go.
There.
All right. Mostly just kudos to Ellen all through here, which is great to see. Let's see. We did have a couple. Oh, does retting affect the viability of the flax seeds or whether they're edible for animals or people?
Well, I don't know. I don't know because our goal was not to produce seed that was edible. So I don't know if you were producing seed to eat, you would handle it in a different way. You might not, you wouldn't have to ret it to if you were using seed to eat, I would think, because retting just separates the stalky part of the plant from the inner fibers. And if you were thinking of producing seed to eat, I think that would be harvested and done in a separate way. But that's something to look into.
And here, there's a question about the height of the flax at harvest. Do you remember how tall it was?
Well, yeah, it can range in height a couple feet, and ours was, maybe about 3 feet high. But then again, that can depend a lot on your growing season. Anybody who's farmed any vegetables or anything knows that you can have some bum years and you can have bumper crop years. So ours was about 3 feet high, and yeah, like I said, we had a wet year, so it had plenty of water to grow. It grew very fast. Yeah.
And then Liz had a question. Did the farm have the equipment or did you make it for this project?
No, the farm had the equipment. We were so fortunate. Some of the equipment is reproduction equipment because like the flax break machine, they don't use the old one because you don't want to ruin an antique object. So a new flax break, they had a new flax break, but it was everything that was new was modeled after the old antique machinery or utensils that we used.
Oh, and Ellen, you have lots of love coming through from your family here.
Oh, nice. That means I got on. Yay.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay, here's a question. You said it would be almost impossible to do the project without the tools provided by Quiet Valley. Are there stages that could be done with more basic tools?
Yes, you probably, I mean, technically, if you didn't have a flax break, you can break it with your hands. You know, I mean, you can probably do the whole process without a lot of these tools, but it would be more time consuming for you and perhaps more difficult. But yeah, there's no reason you can't find a way to do it, to work around some of the tools. I know that, you know, not every farmer had a flax break. So yeah, you can break that each stalk into little pieces. Yeah, you can do it.
Okay. Doesn't look like there are any more questions. There's lots of kudos to you, Ellen.
Oh, thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Hold on, there's another question.
Okay.
Oh, here we go. Can you explain the sizing further and can it be used on other fibers?
Yeah, Marianne, would you unmute Mary Ann so she can
Oh,
talk
let's
about
see.
the sizing? Mary Ann made the sizing and sized it at her house. So I'll let her describe it to you.
Mary Ann, unmute yourself.
Okay, I think, did that work?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know if you can use it on anything else, because it's made from the flax seeds from the plant. And it's very, it's like gloppy. I don't know how else to describe it. It's a very simple process. It was 2 tablespoons of flax seeds and some water, which I off the top of my head don't remember, and then a little vinegar, and you cook it. And it doesn't take very long. You bring it to not a rolling boil, but maybe like a pretty active simmer. And within a few minutes, you can see it. It's just becomes very thick and kind of sticky, and then it's done. You strain it out, and then you can. We dunked it in because we had a lot of flax to size, and so we just dunked it all in the bowl. But a lot of times it's done by, you put the linen on the loom and then you paint it. And it's sort of a single step process. We did it in 2 steps because our fiber was pretty fuzzy. So we dunked it the first time, and then when it went on the loom, they painted it again to get more size on it. I really don't know if you use it for any other fibers. I don't know. I didn't look into it. We were just trying to get the linen.
And there's a question about whether you could make the sizing from immature seeds from the flax that you harvested. And
I
would
guess you could try, right? Yeah.
You could try, yeah, because I have also used flax seeds in cooking at home. I buy flaxseed, and you grind it up and you make an egg substitute when you're baking, and those are always mature seeds, and they get very, very gummy. So an immature seed, I don't know that it would produce the same amount of pectin.
And I would add that we were able to save the stuff that Mary Ann made. And so we saved it for, like, Mary Ann, when did you do that part? When was that?
The scouring,
Yeah.
It was,
I think we were able to save it for a good month.
end of August?
yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
end of August.
So we were able to save it for a month. And then when we wove at Sally's, we still had that same solution.
Yeah,
And we painted the warp with that, but shortly afterward, it started smelling really funky, so we ditched it.
Let's see, there's a question about whether we use treated or untreated seeds available from Landis.
We use treated seeds.
Treated seeds, and for 300 square feet of ground, how much seed did you order versus plant?
I think we used a pound.
Okay. Oh, here was a question about the rolling pin.
Yeah.
And the angling.
Yeah.
Just explain further.
Well, Patty, you've done it.
I did it. Yeah.
Why don't you explain?
I took, because mangling machines are quite large, and I had a small marble cutting board or a candy board, and I had a marble rolling pin. And what I did was I just, after I wet finished my samples, I kind of let them air dry, but not quite dry all the way. And then I just, went over it and over it with the rolling pin, with the marble rolling pin. And you could see immediately that it would flatten out those fibers and bring out the sheen. So it's pretty straightforward. That's all I did.
I'll grab, and I want to thank Carol for asking this question. How detailed was your grant proposal? Did you end up having to make changes to your plan? Because we're really trying to encourage guilds to apply for grants, and one of the things that we've been talking about at the board level recently is maybe looking at the idea of some smaller grants, some micro grants to guilds that maybe would make the process a little simpler for small grants next year.
Mhm.
So can you talk a little bit about the grant process to encourage people to apply?
Sure. You know, I had written grants through my working experience before, so I had some experience with grants and it didn't scare me. So nobody should be scared of writing a grant. It's not a magical thing. If you have an idea, what you're doing is putting on paper what your goals and your plans are. And you know that somewhere along the line, those goals or plans may have to change. And that's okay, because that's part of the learning process that you're going through. But at least when you write a grant and you state your goals and what your plans and make a basic plan for the use of your money, at least you have a framework on which to think and to plan ahead in more detail. So when we wrote the grant, I didn't describe everything in detail. I said we would have a workshop, a weaving workshop, but I didn't know how that weaving workshop would occur. I didn't know who that instructor was going to be. And at that point, when you're writing the grant, I don't think you need to know that kind of detail. I think you just have to have the idea. And then what I made very clear in the beginning of our grant, if we were going to do this, I was not going to do this by myself. This was going to be a group project. And if it wasn't going to be a group project, we weren't going to do it. So I made that quite clear and everybody agreed. So there were people who we divided up tasks, and I coordinated a lot of stuff, but believe me, a lot of the work was done by other people in the guild. So when it came to looking for an instructor, someone said, hey, I'll look for the weaving instructor. And they did some research into different instructors and said, hey, this one and this one and this one we like. How about this one? Or what? And so I said, sure, let's find out what they can present to us. And then we came back and we decided on something. But that's part of your process, not part of your grant writing. And so your grant writing is just saying, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to learn something from this. We don't have the answers yet. So it's okay not to be extremely precise. Like I said, it's a framework, and we changed a lot of things along the way because of COVID. We had to. We didn't think we were going to have any Zoom presentations, but we did. And we didn't think that we wouldn't be meeting in person, but we met every month on Zoom, and we gave updates on the project. So, you know, when you have to change things, you do. And that's part of the learning process, and it's okay, and it's not anything to be afraid about. You'll get to the end. As long as you keep your goals in sight, you can, you know, waver along and you will get to the end goal. And that's what we did. And I'm so proud that we did that, because there were obstacles in our way, and it was not easy at all. It was not easy. It was difficult, but that's what makes it rewarding. So I don't know if I really answered your question about writing a grant, but I would just say, don't be afraid to write a grant. Hey, you know, it's only words on paper. It's not gonna, go for it, because you know what? You only live once. And you know, as I'm getting older and older, I'm not afraid to do anything anymore. Just do it. Live a little. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Anybody going to grow flax?
There's actually, Patty, I'm jumping in here. One more question. If you didn't mangle your linen project at the first wet finishing, can you still achieve good results mangling after a later wash?
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And, in olden times, like in England, the very rich people, they didn't launder their own linens. They sent them out to a professional mangler, and people actually this was their job. They were manglers. Women would take laundry into their home, and they would have large mangling machines in their home that they'd fill with rocks so that they were very heavy, and they'd push this along the tablecloths or whatever, and that would mangle the linens and get them nice and shiny again. So after a washing is when you would mangle again, because the washing is going to soften the fibers and take away that shine. So you can do it any time. You can do it to an old antique fiber you have. Yeah.
Anyone else have any questions? I know that somebody said, is anybody else going to try and do grow flax? And yes, the Philadelphia Guild of Handweavers is going to try growing some flax.
Good.
So should be interesting. Cindy Connor, you're muted. I see you waving your hands.
Cindy's going to be giving a guild program for us in early February on growing.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Spinning and
I grow
spinning.
flax for linen. My vest is linen that I grew.
Oh, yay.
Okay.
And I've got a blog at homeplaceearth.wordpress.com. And in 2017, I wrote a series of posts about flax to linen, and you can find directions for making hackles there.
Can you put that in the chat, Cindy?
I did.
Okay. Let's
It's,
see.
let me copy it. And
Okay. Okay.
and then also
I'm
we've got
writing,
a couple
actually,
of-
I'm writing a book. I've just
Oh.
about finished a book on cotton and flax to linen, from seed to garment, taking both of them all the way to something to wear. just about finished with it. I'm looking for a publisher.
we've
Great.
only had a couple of hands out.
Yeah.
Heidi, I think had hers up first.
Heidi Barr.
Heidi Barr, did you have a question?
You have to unmute.
Okay, am I unmuted now?
Yes.
All right, hey, Ellen, it's great. Your presentation was amazing.
Thank you.
We are growing flax in Pennsylvania. Please check out the Pennsylvania Flax Project. We started growing sort of parallel to you in Pottstown, Pennsylvania.
Oh,
And,
okay.
So everybody that's growing flax, we want to be in contact with you. My partner, Emma DeLong, and I are working to revitalize the flax for linen industry at a regional industrial scale in this region. And this artisanal piece is really important to us. So we're getting ready to start a project that hopefully will reach all the way across Pennsylvania this coming year. So let's all
great.
connect. It's super exciting.
Sure. Oh, that's good to have some fellow growers out there.
Yeah.
I will say that I just want to add too about just onto what Cindy Connor said about writing. I didn't mention, but one of the things I did was to keep everybody in our guild educated and excited about this, because sometimes it's hard to keep the excitement level up when you're doing a long-term project. So each month I wrote a little article about some part of the process. I started with the history. I did an article on just the plant and bast fibers. Then I went into every part of the process, so that there were probably a dozen articles I wrote that everybody got. So it was a way to educate my own guild, educate myself, and keep the level of excitement up, because I think that's an important thing to do when you have a grant, is to keep the excitement rolling, keep the project going, so that people don't fall off the side.
Yeah. Janann has a question.
Yeah, this is about the sizing. I noticed that it uses vinegar. And I know, like with wool, you've got to make sure you wash the vinegar out really well because it can damage the fiber. Do we have that same issue with flax?
I don't think so because, well, it's not, the sizing isn't in there forever because you're going to wet finish your project at the end after you've woven it. So anything, any sizing that's in there is going to be washed out. And, you know, animal fibers and plant fibers are very different animals, literally.
Right.
They're different. And
So-
so some things do not bother fiber and some things don't bother wool. So, but the sizing gets washed out anyway.
Right, but I guess I was concerned about, you know, like when you did it, you guys dipped it in, right? Into the
Yeah.
sizing. Then
Yeah.
when you wove, it was much later. It was what, a month later?
Yeah, it didn't, I would say it didn't affect the
Okay.
strength of the fiber. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
yeah.
And Elizabeth, you had a question, your hand was up, then it went down.
Only because I don't know how to do this. But it's
You
so
just did
nice
it.
to hear you guys. I'm in
Hi,
Missouri
Beth.
now.
Hi, Beth.
Hey,
Hi, Beth.
so happy. I can't believe, all I can tell you is I'm smiling from ear to ear. I cannot believe how beautiful that all was. And the
Oh,
joy.
thank you. Thank you. We miss you, Beth.
Oh, I missed you guys. I should have stayed. Like, I was just thinking, I should have, because of the Zoom and everything, I could have been, you know, still part of that.
You could have.
I was just like such in
Yeah.
a fog. It was like so weird. But yeah, it's awesome. Awesome.
Beth was the weaving person at Peters Valley School of Craft. And she was also a member of our guild, but she had to move away.
I know. And now I'm a member of the, let's see, Weavers Guild of St. Louis, which is like a cool guild.
Oh,
And we're just, what is it? It's like the second oldest guild in the country. And
Wow.
I think the national thing is going to be here next year and we're going to host that. So maybe
Cool.
you guys can come and I could host
Yeah.
you here at the house. You know, it'd be
very
really fun.
good. Sounds
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it'd be great to see you all. It's good to hear you talking. It's wonderful.
Well,
Anybody else? Questions? It's 8:30. I want to thank everybody who came. We had a lot of members, some non-members. I really appreciate everybody being here. And we're going to keep doing this next year. The roundtables have been a lot of fun for us and also a good way to get together with people, not just to have business meetings, but to have some fun programs. So we'll have a schedule coming out with some more roundtables next year. So.
And I can tell you that the January roundtable is going to be about 7 of the local fiber sheds are going to be part of a panel discussion.
Oh, that's good.
Yep.
And I just want to, again, I want to thank MAFA for this opportunity. It was an opportunity of a lifetime. And I want to thank every member of my guild. You are all so special to me. Thank you.
Thanks, Ellen.
Ellen.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay.